right, so we are back and live. This is our third episode of Destination Unknown. Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. So today we are going to do out-of-body experiences.
We are. Happy Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. In honor of Friday the 13th, we were gifted some wine this time. If you have the bottle, just want to give a shout out to Glenn. He's there. Oh well, let's show it on yours there.
There we go.
Yeah, he's was a fan of the Vin Armani show, and then has become a friend now. He's traveled out to New Hampshire quite a few times, as a matter of fact, to several events. Real Liberty Lover. He sent a nice note. He said, Vin, my contribution to the search for truth on the Vin and Dave show. This is one of my favorite cabs. Let me know what you guys think. What is the name on there?
Laird.
Laird. Yeah. It's a 2012 Cabernet.
It is quite good.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I like it. It's really good. I'm actually going to, if you don't mind, because it looks like we're getting a little bit of weirdness, I'm gonna dump one of our cameras here. I don't think we need it. We don't need the wide. We don't need the wide this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm dumping it. I don't know. Looks like we're running out of system resources on there. I hope that the let me jump over to YouTube. Yeah, it's saying that the stream is not fantastic. Well, we'll power through it. We'll power through and we'll see what happens. If I'll check on the chat from time to time. Okay. People in the chat, if it's whack, just let me know, and I will try to do something to fix it in the mix. So we're going to do out-of-body experiences today.
We are, but first,
yes,
I want to take just like 2 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
And touch on something that you had said during the last show, and I don't think that we had time to properly appreciate it or even explore it at all, really. So on the last show, we were talking about simulated reality and the holographic universe. And we were talking through quantum physics and all the different interpretations. And you had theorized that all the particles in the universe should be entangled because at the point of the Big Bang, everything was one particle.
That's right.
Right? So there was a singularity, exploded, Big Bang. So why wouldn't everything be entangled? Interestingly enough, David Bohm, who's a well-known physicist,
right?
He came up with Bohmian mechanics,
okay,
which is a real contender for how quantum mechanics actually works. I'm a huge fan. Pilot wave theory is what it's commonly referred to, and I actually think it makes a ton of sense. But one of the things that he says is that all particles in the universe are able to instantaneously exchange information with all others. Essentially, what you said about entanglement is a key component of Bohmian mechanics.
Interesting.
And even though it's not, he doesn't say everything's entangled, he says they're all capable of instantaneous communication, which so far we've only seen with entangled particles.
So maybe I was right. So maybe everything actually is entangled.
Indeed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look at that. I'm a lot closer to a physicist than I thought I was previously. Right. Okay.
It's good stuff.
All right. So okay. Everything's connected. I think that can start to get us into the weirdness that is out-of-body experiences. I think this show might end up being a little bit different. We hadn't really discussed this in depth, but you did mention that you had some experiences with out-of-body. So are we talking astral projection, lucid dreaming? Maybe we should define all of these different terms, right? So I figure what we could talk about today, the sort of three. It seems like there are three classes of out-of-body experiences that seem to be the most common, traditionally talked about. I'm talking about the near-death experience, right?
Yep.
Going towards the light, astral projection, lucid dreaming. Do you want to do a breakdown on those three as you understand them, and we'll go with whatever your definition is for the rest of the show.
Sure. So I actually look at it in kind of a historical perspective. And throughout history, every culture has had this concept of alternative planes. There's been someplace else other than the physical world to go. It's been referred to as the astral plane, the ethereal plane. There are stories in every mythology across the planet of visiting these places. You think about Yggdrasil, right? The tree of the world, right? So you have the 9 realms, right, connected by this tree. The same kind of concept exists in the Kabbalah with the tree of life.
Tree of life, right?
Every the same kind of thing was true in Mesopotamia. First Nation people have the same sort of idea about these interconnected other realms that exist in parallel with ours, but you can visit them, right? So, to me, when you talk about this phenomena, I don't think they're separate things. I think that astral projection, lucid dreaming, near-death experiences, which I classify near-death experiences as an involuntary astral projection.
Involuntary astral projection. Okay.
Because, they're dying. They have no control over it. They're not doing it on purpose. So, there are examples, lots of examples, verifiable examples of where people have left their body and sensed things, experienced things that they wouldn't have really any way of experiencing had they been physically confined to their physical body. So is it a soul leaving the body? Is it some sort of ethereal spirit form? Some people call it a subtle body.
Subtle body, right? I've heard that one.
Yep. So, and even the concept of the silver cord that is supposed to connect.
Yep. We'll get into that one, of course.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But there are references to that, even in the Bible. So, there's a lot of history. And whenever I see something, a concept that has a few thousand years of history backing it up from completely separated cultures who had no interaction with each other when they came up with this stuff,
right,
I think there's something here.
Yeah, I think that's where the so I was a skeptic starting out on this whole concept, but I've always been a very active dreamer. I remember my dreams. And weirdly enough, when I was very, very young, I would have, and I called them even when I was very, very young. So I must have been, these probably started when I was 4 or 5 years old. Because I would wake up and I would tell my mom, I had a future dream.
Ooh, nice.
I would say, I had a future dream of something that's going to happen in the future. And then I would tell her this, and this. And within like 2 weeks, it would happen. And then I would say, Mom, that was my future dream. Remember when I told you it just happened? And she would be like, and it happened so often that it was just normal. And so I would tell her and she'd be like, okay, well, I guess we'll wait for it to happen, right? I don't have those so much anymore, but I do dream a lot. I remember my dreams. And I've always been fascinated with what's going on in the dreamscape. And in the early days of the internet, I was a hacker. I was online, and so this is going to be 95, 96, around that time.
So the statute of limitations has expired.
Right. There was so... right, exactly. Wait, how long was that?
This is something you read about in a book.
Yeah, wait a minute. No, there were... I mean, at that time, the web was not really a very active place. It was kind of silly, actually, 95, 96. There wasn't much on the web. But what was on the web was a lot of esoteric, occult stuff. So you're going everything...
And a lot of porn.
The thing was, there wasn't a lot of porn at that time. Most of the porn was actually on Usenet because it took so damn long to download these. This is the dial-up days.
Back when Usenet was a thing,
right?
And
exactly.
BBSs,
right? And BBSs too, right? So you would, because you would be able to download all the different pieces. Sort of, it was bad waiting for a website to load up. So. Yeah. There was a lot about... That's when I first got into astral projection, because there was a lot... There was also a lot on Kabbalah. There was, of course, like Wiccan stuff, but like angels and all kinds of very interesting things. But the astral projection was interesting to me because there were all of these instructions of things to do.
Sure.
To get yourself to astral project, right? And a lot of it is straight up meditation.
Yep.
But there are some very sort of specific things. They would talk about first basically getting yourself into a state of paralysis, like sleep paralysis, where your body has fallen asleep, and then your mind is still awake, and then don't fall asleep at that point, because that's the point that you fall asleep. Or other things would be like wait until you're in a state of what's called hypnagogia, right? So watching yourself fall asleep. And then when you're in the state of hypnagogia, try to like at that point be conscious. And then everything from try to lift yourself out of your body to try to push yourself out of your body with your hands. See if you can move your hands, your astral hands, which you can. Like people could try this tonight. Lay down, really, especially on your back in particular, and really relax. Wait until your hand and your whole body feels like it's, you can't move. You're relatively paralyzed. And then see if you can, like, move your hand that's not your hand. Like, and, and to try to pull yourself out that way. Sometimes rolling out, which I had some bad experiences with. But I was able for a period of time to until I stopped, and maybe I'll get into the reason why I stopped. And this seems to be true for a lot of people who experiment with this when they're young. But I could get out of my body, look back. My dreams started to get way more lucid at that point, where I could just, in a dream, immediately know that I was dreaming. And
then take control.
Yeah. One of the things, now this is interesting to me, and as you talk about it occurring in all of these different cultures, and this was something that I wanted to bring up early on because I think it's a cool jumping off point, is, so one of the things that I love to do in dreams is fly. I love to do that. And so you go lucid and fly, but one of the most interesting things about the whole flying thing in dreams is that the way to fly is, it's hard to describe, and maybe you can help me to articulate it. It's almost like a muscle memory. There's a flight muscle almost, in the same way that it's like I don't really think about opening and closing my hands or blinking my eye right there, but there's a thing that I do that controls my muscles, but it's not thinking.
Because if you think about it, you can't do it.
Right, like, and I wouldn't even know how to think about open hand, closed hand. It's just like you do it, but but there's a neuro response that has a certain feel that lets you know I'm opening and closing my hands. And I can actually sit here right now, and I can do the thing that in a dream would make me fly. Like I can. Sort of the way that perhaps somebody who's had a limb amputated would still have phantom limb, right?
Is it kind of an all-over tingly feeling?
No, it's more of it almost feels like a muscle contracting in a way.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like a muscle contraction. That's what's so weird about it. But I can do it here. And the thing is, in a dream, it will make me fly. Wow. And it's weird because I don't get a chance to really interact with people who have those sorts of same experiences. Maybe some people who are checking this out can say whether that's true or not for them if they fly in their dreams. But I think that it's so weird because of the fact that it has this feeling to me like what I would imagine phantom limb syndrome to be. Like to where if your hand was cut off, I imagine that I could still imagine what it would be like for me to grasp at something, right? And it's like, what is that? Like it's some sort of pattern in the brain, and I'm like, how is that pattern in human beings? Don't fly. How is that pattern in the brain of a human being? You understand what I'm saying? It's almost like as though I had a limb or an appendage, like a tail or something, that I had wagged before, but you understand? It's very, very weird.
Yeah, I absolutely, totally get what you're talking about here. So, to me, I think all of it is it's a very subconscious experience, right? You are you're doing things in a natural way that are in the physical world unnatural, but in the astral plane or the ethereal world is natural and should be a part of your experience. The people that have been able to enter into the astral plane historically have been shamans and spiritual leaders, people like that. So there's an interesting concept that I just want to run past you. People have, all right, let's say that the Nazca lines, only visible from the air. And let's presuppose that the astral experience that people have been experiencing is actually a real phenomena. They are literally projecting something out into a reality that is separate from their body and able to access places that they cannot.
Are we talking about remote viewing here?
Not really remote viewing, but let's say that you live in Nazca. You're a native inhabitant. You are, taking part in building the Nazca lines when they were first constructed. But everybody's been thinking about this in the sense of, it must have been for aliens or extraterrestrials. Right. What if it was actually for the shamans that were traveling out of their bodies and flying and looking down at the designs?
Oh, see, you're getting into that makes actually more sense.
Yes.
Because it would be a way to orient yourself to maybe deliver a healing to someone remotely, to see something remotely, to look for water or where crops would be or where game might be.
Or bees use navigation.
Yes.
Same kind of thing. I mean, if you are flying around in the middle of, the Nazca plain, it would be nice to have some markers. I'm just saying. There's not a lot out there.
Well, and especially if you just, because it is a bit disorienting. And here's the other part about it that is interesting. You're not exactly looking at, I realized this in the first couple of trips out. You're not really looking at this world. It's like, the idea of you come out and you look at your body, I don't think that's fully accurate.
No, because you're using ethereal eyes to look at a physical thing.
But I don't even think you're looking at a physical thing. I think in some ways you're almost looking at what might be called a memory or a shadow, because I had many experiences that the further away I got, the more chance there was for things that were clearly not a part of my physical reality to enter into the picture.
Okay.
Right? The further away from my body I got, the more dreamlike it was. And I think perhaps it was because it was almost like moving out from a memory almost in time, right? So it was like anywhere that and if my room, I knew it. I had mapped it in my consciousness, you know what I mean? Many, many, many times. When I got to the places that I didn't know as well, that's when sort of the dreamlike, the fantasy, the things that were clearly not a reflection of me looking at reality would step in. It's almost as though the place had to either be mapped by me or someone I knew or something like. It's very, very strange phenomenon. It was quick to what you might want to call going into another dimension or something like that. But it's always quick to flip me into some other place, some other plane.
So I think there's two ways to look at that, right? One way is the hater skeptic view, which is, well, of course you're not going to be able to see anything you haven't seen before, and you're going to be making it up as you go. So that's why it's more fuzzy, right? I think the other way to look at it is, and people have consistently reported these experiences where they actually not only travel in one astral plane, but there are multiple planes that they can travel through. Edgar Cayce used to talk about when he would travel through the planes, there was a definite progression where he would go from, nightmare images to people in robes to, different, shades of light to an actual almost ethereal representation of a town, but it was empty, right? And the next one would be like a town, but there were people in it. And then beyond that, there was, like the astral plane and the Akashic records, which I want to talk about soon. But
let's talk about Edgar Cayce in terms of who he was for the people who don't know who Edgar Cayce was.
Oh my God. Okay, if you don't know who Edgar Cayce was, please go look him up. The guy was called the Sleeping Prophet.
Cayce, right?
Yes, Cayce.
Yeah.
He was perhaps the most famous and most successful practitioner of the mental arts ever. People talk about Nostradamus. They talk about different people who have been psychic or whatever. He took it to a completely different level. He really focused most of his efforts on healing people and helping people. And so he did, I don't know the number, like 15,000 readings during his life. It was a ridiculously high number of readings. And most of them were remote. People would send him a letter and they would say, I feel really sick and, I haven't been able to work in a year and blah, blah, blah. And he would literally just take their name. He would go into a trance and another being, another entity would join with him. And normally the readings would start out with something along the lines of, we have the body, which meant that this other presence had come in and joined with Edgar Cayce. And they were then going to do something with the information that they had. And they always referred to themselves as we. It was always we. It was never I. So they would, okay, I've got this letter from this person. They're sick, blah, blah, blah. And then he would rattle off some, it sounded like it would make no sense, right? It's like, drink grape juice for a month. And the person would do that, and they would be completely healed. I mean, there are thousands of examples. And there's actually a nonprofit that has preserved as many of his readings as have survived. There's 14,000 and some odd readings that have survived. And they are devoted to studying his prophecies, his readings, his guidance on health and healing. A lot of the things that he came up with were brand new. And, a lot of the predictions that he made, this one drives me crazy, all right? So I think it was in the 30s. He predicted that the United States would discover in 1958, right? So this was like 28 years in advance, right? And he was very specific. He was like, in 1958, the United States will discover the death ray that was used on Atlantis.
Okay.
Just for your awareness, in 1958, two scientists from Bell Laboratories published a paper outlining the science behind the optical laser.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
And that's not, and see, this is not like his best prediction. This is just one of those predictions where skeptics are like, oh, he said in 1958 they were going to find a death ray, and I'm like, read your history, 1958. That was when we invented the optical laser.
So where did Edgar Cayce, or what was his impression? Was he conscious when he was making these readings?
Absolutely not. He didn't remember them at all.
And so he didn't remember going anywhere or doing anything. He didn't remember maybe leaving his body or anything. He just no memory.
So he would have somebody transcribing, and he would talk throughout the entire thing. And he would always refer to himself as we, and he would describe what was happening. So when he was describing going through these, different planes of existence to get to the Akashic records, that was actually somebody transcribing what he was saying while he was in the trance. When he would wake up, he would have no idea what he said.
Interesting.
And some of the things that he said actually conflicted quite a bit. He was a devout Christian, but yet some of the things that he came up with and said, like evidence of reincarnation, for example, were in direct conflict with his Christianity. And so he's like, I couldn't have possibly said that, but he did. And, a lot of his stuff makes a whole lot of sense.
Wow, that is a trip, man. That is a trip. So
if there was a Michael Jordan of psychics, that would be him.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Those are so hard. Like, those are so hard to disprove. And then when there's people who are like, "Oh no, he predicted something." I do think there's something there. The U.S. government clearly thought that there was something. I believe it's Project Rainbow that was the.
No, it was actually.
What was it? You have it?
I took a note because I thought this would be a great thing to talk about.
The remote viewing?
Stargate. Stargate Project.
Oh, what is that one?
Yeah, Stargate Project is the remote viewing.
That's the remote viewing. Okay.
Ed Dames and the Men Who Stare at Goats.
Men Who Stare at Goats, yep.
So this was the project. Now, it did have other names along the way, but they finally landed on the Stargate Project.
So yeah, I had remembered Rainbow from like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That was the,
Gotcha.
Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that was a mini project of it or something.
Well, there were several projects, and then they were all brought together under this one umbrella
Stargate.
in 1978.
Interesting.
So this shows to me, right, like I never use the government as the determiner of if something is legitimate. Right. But somebody on the inside thought that it was a good idea to spend millions of dollars looking into psychic phenomena, remote viewing, clairvoyance. I mean, all of these skills. And they thought they could quantify it, make it scientific, and create a training program where they could train the spies of the future who never have to leave the barracks. I mean, they could literally, from their chair, spy on Soviet installations and whatever around the world. So it was an incredible I don't know what you want to call it, waste of time possibly. But I think they were doing it wrong, quite honestly. I mean, I think they were overanalyzing it. They were making it about exploiting it for government purposes, military purposes, and it's not about that. It's about personal growth and development.
Right.
It is not about getting the inside scoop on the Russians.
Yeah, it's I don't know how. When I was in those states, I always felt. It always felt dreamy. Like, it never felt like I was like I had complete consciousness. And I think some of that is probably because complete consciousness probably requires that you are actually conscious. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
And I think that probably that, even if you are having some interaction with your body, the chemical cocktail that's going on in the brain at that point, the getting sort of, all of the sleep, all the serotonin and all of that going in that's not conducive to really being able to pay really, really great attention.
Not only that, but the different brainwave states that you're in as you're relaxing and going to sleep, right? So you go through the alpha, the beta, the theta, the delta. You can enhance your control of your different sleep states through the use of binaural beats.
Yep, I've done that.
And I think that's a fabulous tool for people to use who want to, maybe provide themselves a better experience in doing this. So use it for good, use it for personal development and self growth and all that, but don't use it to spy. So,
or maybe you can't use it to spy. Maybe that's the whole thing. So, my I've always wondered about so you brought up Edgar Cayce and traveling through the various dimensions.
Oh yeah.
So I've always wondered about the lucid dreaming, because when I was astral projecting and then I would have lucid dreams, it felt so close in terms of just the sensation, the sort of the level of consciousness that I was at, that, I was reading things where people would say, oh no, the dream world is actually just a layer, and you go to that layer sort of every night when you go to sleep. And I guess the skeptical view is like, well, will know, and people who study dreams, that it's like, oh well, you're thinking about something and you're anxious about something, and this is a way for your psyche to sort of like work it out and get it all taken out, and I don't know, when I started astral projecting and then would have lucid dreams, I don't know if I'm ready to accept that that's all happening in my head. I think I'm good with the idea that, like, no, this is your psyche trying to work it out. Mm-hmm. But who's to say that your psyche works it out inside your head? Who's to say that your psyche doesn't go into some simulation,
well, who's to say,
and work it out
but
there?
That's the thing. I mean, these are the scientists who don't recognize that we're living in a simulation. So what they say means nothing. Right.
So I'm going to tell you why I stopped astral projecting.
Okay.
This was a very, very strange experience, strange story. So I had gotten actually very, very good at doing this.
Quick question.
Yes.
When you were preparing yourself
yes.
to go astral,
yes.
Did you go through the process of like surrounding yourself in white light mm-hmm. and, like putting on your armor, that kind of stuff? Not armor, but like protective shields kind of thing.
What's interesting is it's funny that you would ask that question, because when so mind you, when this is going on, I'm like 15 and 16 years old.
Okay.
When I first began, I was doing all of that, sort of like, but it was also because I was scared. I was anxious, nervous about
no idea what's out
right.
there.
I don't know what's out there, and the things that I was reading were people were like, okay, listen, there are bad entities out there. You need to do this. This is an important practice. Like, absolutely do this, right? So I did it, and and then other things like, and if you ever get lost, just look back. There's going to be a silver cord. You can pull on that. Like, don't worry. Like, it'll always snap you back to your body and all of this.
Yep.
And it was true. The first time I looked and I saw it, I was like, okay, that's weird. But being 15, 16 years old, after a few times of going through all that process and everything being fine, I started to get a little more lax with that process. Right. And in getting more lax with the process, weirdly enough, it also started to be a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. It seemed like I had a lot more freedom in the experience. Right.
Okay.
A little more daredevil-y, right? It's like operating without a net, you know what I mean? And typical teenager, risk taker, like that's what I did. So I had an experience where I was astral projecting, and I found myself almost immediately upon leaving my body. It was like I left my body, and then I kind of got sucked up, and I was in...
Did you normally get sucked up, or was that a different thing? Because you were talking about climbing out, rolling out.
Yeah, no. Well, it was more like I got out. I don't remember how I had gotten out that time. It was later on. At this point, I was pretty much able to, like, I had that sort of muscle memory thing mm-hmm. of that same flight muscle would be the one that would like lift me out of my body. So, and usually I would come out and I wouldn't look back at my body, because often if I would look back at my body, I'd pop right back in or go to sleep, fall into a dream, all of that.
Yep.
So I'd go out, get out of my room, like get as far away from my body as I possibly could, and that's what would enable me to stay out for longer. And it was in that process that I kind of got like, I felt myself kind of like, I don't know if sucked is the way to describe it, but like shifted almost, right? So I'm like shifted kind of up and sideways. And then I'm standing in, I guess, like, best way I could describe it, the feeling that I got was it was a school.
Okay.
Academy of sorts. And there were these little entities. I'm not going to say that they were necessarily human. Maybe they had like human-ish forms, but
also an incredibly common archetype throughout history.
Okay, so yeah, it seemed like they were maybe wearing some clothing, some sort of robes or something, but they were young. I could tell, not children, but like you get the sense of like immature, kind of young, right? And so they came up to me and they're like, "Hey, oh, you're here. Come over here. Let's show you this, and like this is where we learned this, and this is where." And there were like series of sort of almost like old Greek or Roman amphitheaters, and they would like sit in there, and I sat in there with them for a little while, and it was like, "Oh, here's where we fly, and here we do this." I don't remember all of the things.
Oh my God,
it
was Hogwarts,
doing, right? It's like it's funny because it's like, yeah, I'm describing Hogwarts, aren't I? Now, mind you, folks, this is 95, 96. There's no way there's no Hogwarts even in existence at that time. So, I was really getting bored with this whole situation. So I just sort of came down off the steps and started to like just walk down a hallway. And as I walked down this hallway, this sort of large entity sort of comes around a corner.
Okay.
And just locks right onto me.
Mm-hmm.
And this loud, I mean, I don't even know. It's hard to describe the level of sound, but like sounding like it just was like enveloping, and just this loud sort of voice just booming like, "What are you doing here? I see you. I know who you are. Why are you here? You're not supposed..." And then the whole scene starts going with all these colors like around this entity, and like all of what look like walls and all of that starts dissolving into nothing. And it's like this swirling vortex of color, and it's like, and then it starts coming close to me, and I'm like, yeah, and boom, I was back in my body, and like woke up, and I was like, okay, never doing it
Dude,
again.
you got caught by the hall monitor.
Yeah.
Dang.
I was like, I am never. But the impression that I got was not that this thing had anything to do with that school, but that this thing was like sort of lurking on the outskirts, and
creepy uncle style.
See, I don't know. It did not, it was interesting, like what it was saying, like what it was communicating was not like necessarily, "You're not supposed to be here, get out." It was more like I see you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got you. I see you. And I was like, I am never.
Yeah, like Sauron talking to Frodo.
That's exact. But of course, this is before any of the Lord of the Rings movies or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you say that, because yes, that was exactly the sort of message, like, I'm locked onto you. Yep. And I had this sort of impression for a long time that like that I would not be able to escape that. Like I had this impression that it wasn't just limited to the astral plane.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had this impression that almost like once I got back was almost like, oh, maybe something's like following me now, but it was very much like, I am never going to actively do that ever again. That entity hasn't shown up in any dreams or anything like that. I still have lucid dreams. I still dream quite a bit, but that was a moment where I was like, I'm done.
Wow. That is epic weirdness. I gotta say, I mean, that is quite, I mean, I can see where that would be traumatizing, to be perfectly honest.
Dude, it was because it wasn't, because again, in that I was conscious,
mm-hmm.
right? It's not like being in a dream and waking up from a dream. I had done this so many times, and I was completely conscious through the whole thing. And because the interesting thing about the lucid dreaming is and am able to have a very high, and it's why it's different than an out-of-body experience, than like an astral projection for me. I'm able to have a high degree of alteration of the outside landscape in a lucid dream.
Sure. Because you're kind of designing it. So, yeah.
Right. But in an astral projection, that's not the case at all. I'm interacting with it in very much the same way that I'm interacting with this world here. It's a much weirder world.
Yes.
And the rules of how I can interact with things are different.
Yeah, I can see that because, and again, going back to historical records, right? I mean, there are so many different varieties of this exact same story. Even the story of being discovered, right? Because I think everybody goes into the experience of, wow, I'm discovering something new, or I've been taught this from an elder who's showing me how to access higher levels of knowledge than I'm normally entitled to. I'm kind of getting away with something. I'm, getting into something that is bigger than myself. The controlling entity, right, who snaps people back, who says, I see you, I don't approve of you being here, that sort of thing is also a recurring theme. So, any time you research, astral projection or the ethereal plane or any of these types of ways of gathering knowledge that are outside of our quote unquote normal experience, there is usually some kind of entity that is trying to hold you back, who is trying to, prevent you from gaining certain knowledge. And this is something that, again, has come up, in multiple references from various civilizations. It's never just, oh, hey, hop into the, ethereal plane and we're going to take a look around. Everything's cool. No, there are dangers there. And when you and I both were teenagers and we were playing around with this and, we both read the same material as far as, sheathe yourself in this protective white light and make sure, you've got an eye on the cord because that can snatch you back in case of danger. If there was no danger, there would be no warning about danger.
See, that's an interesting point. That's a very interesting point. I think when things keep occurring in different cultures, we have, there's really two options, right? It's like whether it's well, they're all memes, right? They're all ideas. So it could be a technology. It could be some concept about God or about nature or about the nature of reality or whatever it is. There are, innumerable numbers of these that seem to simultaneously pop up, whether it's in the archaeological record or whether it's in some sort of historical record. These discoveries being made or concepts existing, they either have to have a single point of origin that then has traveled to these two locations.
Sure.
Or that it's just somehow a part of, is it in our biology?
Well, let us explore that concept through the ayahuasca experience.
Okay, that's a good one.
Because I've never traveled that road. I would like to.
You should. We should do it together.
We should totally plan to do this.
I think now you're in. Now that you've said that, we have to do it together.
Yes, I have announced it publicly. Me and Vin, ayahuasca. Okay.
I like it.
So, what you have told me, and what I have subsequently verified through other research, because that's what I do, the experiences that people have during this are incredibly consistent.
Oh, yes.
Like, to a weird degree, to where, okay, so, cards on the table. I've been pretty high in the past.
You?
No.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
No.
Just normal stuff, marijuana, and I've also been incredibly drunk, but that's a different story. So, to to me, I get that everybody has a different high experience because everybody has different brain chemistry. It affects people differently, that sort of thing.
Especially weed.
Yeah,
especially weed.
And there are so many varieties and so many different
subjective.
things.
It's a very subjective experience.
Super subjective. So I've never really, I guess, been a huge fan because, I've never been able to accurately predict what my reaction is going to be.
Right.
Like with wine, I know exactly how much wine, what kind of wine, I can totally predict what's going to happen over the next couple of hours. Not so much with weed. Now, that's the problem I have, or not the problem, but that is the, quantum weirdness, if you will, of the ayahuasca experience. It is super consistent.
Well, here's the interesting part about that consistency. I don't think that you can completely say that the consistency is due to the chemical itself, right? Because there's also, as with any psychedelic experience, set and setting is important. Mindset and the physical setting that you're in.
But not even that. Your brain chemistry. This is the part that weirds me out.
Okay, go ahead.
Like, my brain chemistry is different, medically different than most people. I have ADD. I literally react to things in much different ways than normal people. So chemicals like alcohol, like marijuana, pretty much anything that affects a normal person in a particular way will affect me in a different way. And I have over the past couple of years since I was diagnosed, I have come to understand more about my brain chemistry and about how things affect me personally. And honestly, I can sit with someone who is more neurotypical, and we can smoke the same weed. But yet their experience is far different than mine because our brain chemistries are different, right? So what's really baffling me about the ayahuasca thing is that it is documented to be extremely consistent across multiple types of people. It's not just 3 or 4 people said, oh, we had a similar experience. It's thousands of people saying we've had almost identical experiences. That's beyond weird.
Well, so the skeptic in me is going to say one thing that you can't discount in the ayahuasca experience that is not the same as the experience you're describing with weed is that it's done in a ceremonial setting that is incredibly old and is ritualistic in a way that ceremonies like I've done, it's either 12 or 13. I've done at least a dozen ayahuasca ceremonies, and I've sat with 4 shamans, 4 separate shamans. One, a Shipibo Indian, like straight out the jungle, seriously. Like, this dude couldn't even speak Spanish, you know what I mean? And he had like the long hair, but then he had like the shaved right here, like straight up Shipibo Indian. Like, his Spanish was bad. He spoke, the Shipibo language, whatever it was. Those were my first ceremonies. I think my first 4 were with him. Those were by far the most magical ceremonies that I've had. Like this, you could just feel like the ancient, the energy of this ceremony. But the other thing that you could feel about the ceremony was that it was very ritualistic and programmatic in that all of the ceremonies really felt like they traveled along a very similar path. There's some sort of space in the middle of the ceremony where typically the shaman is doing a little more personal work. That's sort of the personal piece of the ceremony, and that's the most important piece. But getting there and sort of coming down from that, those 2 pieces were like, it was like what you would imagine the difference between going to like the same priest giving Latin Mass this Sunday and then the next Sunday. If you can tell the difference, the guy's probably a brand new priest. You know what I mean? So it was like that, to where it
Yeah.
was like, okay, wow, I know exactly what I'm getting into. The same was true. There was a shaman who was French, but had studied for like 14 years down in Peru, and I did maybe 3 or 4 with him as well, maybe more, maybe 5. And his was, it was the beginning and end was a lot shorter. In the middle, he was really doing a lot more sort of personal stuff, and it's interesting because but still there was a consistency between them, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
They were the technique was the same, so it's like you're being led on a journey, and there's some continuity in that journey. So like that piece of the experience, you would expect that it should lend itself to some level of like consistency. However, so what's weird to me is not necessarily like the ramp up and all of that and how that's the same. One of the weirdest things to me is, and this struck me from the beginning, and it was something that I went into it very skeptical of,
Mm-hmm.
is that everybody feels a spirit coexisting with them,
Mm-hmm.
another consciousness not inside of you, because you're not even inside your body necessarily. Another consciousness there with you and communicating with you, and it's very, very clear that it's another consciousness and it's not you, and everyone experiences that.
Yep.
And the other thing, and this was the part that I was the most skeptical of, and this was the part where I was like, there's something here when I experienced it for myself, because that's you can't deny it. Everyone feels it as a old female spirit.
Right. Who you then ask questions of.
Who you ask questions of.
Why does everybody...
Everyone, male, female, from whatever background, whatever culture, whatever language you speak, that should not happen.
No. And that's my point, is that if you're hallucinating, those should be random hallucinations.
There should be a level of subjectivity to it that is not present in the ayahuasca experience.
Right,
No.
because everybody meets an old woman who knows things, they ask questions, they get answers.
That's right.
That's everybody's experience. That's freaking weird.
Yeah, it's why I've kept going back. And the other thing about it is that the answers that she gives they're legit.
Yeah.
They're super, super legit.
It's like the Oracle.
Totally, but it's also communicated in the way that it's communicated is, again, like hard to, you walk away sort of knowing but unable to articulate. Like you completely know, but you're unable to articulate, much in the same way that I describe like the muscle memory, the flight, or like opening and closing your hands. It's that same sort of experience. Now, to the out-of-body experience aspect of it, there is a dimension or a level within the ayahuasca experience, and I call it the carnival. The woman who was the organizer for a very, very long time of the ceremonies, and we'll probably go visit her. She's down in I've interviewed her on my show, Kat. She's down in Costa Rica at Rhythmia. Maybe that's where we'll go and do these ceremonies. But
Sweet.
she, I was describing this to her, and she was like, "Oh, you're talking about Candyland," and it really is like you're in this, and it seems like everybody experiences this particular period of the ceremony. If you've done a large enough dose, you go into this. It looks like it's made out of candy. And it's like these living carnival rides and games, and I see casino games sometimes, and it's like all these little bubble animals.
That's your Vegas.
Right. It could be. It could be. But it's.
Is that where the whole Willy Wonka thing came from?
It's a very Willy Wonka-y type of situation. It's just, it is, you're right, it is very weird to... When I see that level of consistency, it tells me we're not dealing with the subjective human experience here.
Yes.
But the question becomes, again, so that brings me full circle back to my question. Is this inside of us, and we all share the same? So Jung might say it's inside of us, right? He might say, oh, these are Jungian archetypes. They're sort of built into the human psyche, human biology. Or, as Terence McKenna, no, maybe it wasn't Terence McKenna. Maybe it's Rupert Sheldrake, who was hanging out with Terence towards the end of his life, who was kind of into the 100th monkey idea, and this idea that actually we're just radio receivers of consciousness. And so perhaps,
I love that.
Right, that's actually what's going on, that like consciousness doesn't live inside of our brains at all, any more than the music coming from a radio station lives inside the radio.
Which goes back to what you were saying 2 shows ago about Twitter doesn't live inside your phone.
Well, what's so crazy about that thought is that it's like, but we built systems that do this.
Yeah. So are we accessing perhaps consistent subroutines that exist across all our programming?
And that takes us to the holographic universe.
Boom.
We're right back. It all goes back to the holographic universe.
I'm telling you, everything is tied in, not necessarily to the holographic universe, but everything is tied into everything else.
I mean, I wonder, in a time when we're living in a time where, like, I mean, I'm looking at this screen here, and I mean, I turned it off, but I was seeing there, the chat was up, and people were actively in there chatting, checking us out, joining in the conversation. How do we deny these reports and these ideas that have existed since time immemorial, of people having these out-of-body experiences, of people, of visitations of people from a distance, and like, no, how did I see you when you were clearly all the way across the world? But no, we clearly had a conversation, and it's like, oh yeah, and I saw you like in a dream or in astral projection or something like that. How do we deny those when, like, we've created a system to do it?
Right.
At a much more crude level, clearly, because we've got to use all these gadgets and gizmos, and there's 20,000 points of failure. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So think back to the okay. So I'm not a super religious person, but I have read. I've read the whole Bible. I was going to say I've read most of the Bible, but I've read the whole thing. I find it an incredibly interesting book. And there is a lot of really strange stuff in there.
Yes, agreed.
And so Jesus, who not only mimicked the Star Trek replicators, also had the ability to stand in front of a gigantic crowd of thousands and thousands of people, speak softly, yet be heard by everybody in attendance. Now, is that divine vocal projection, or is that a technology that we have today that we use, right? I mean, you can stick a microphone on somebody, and
that's right.
Depending on who
it
is.
Are you suggesting that Jesus had a lav mic on when he was delivering the Sermon on the Mount?
It's entirely possible. Or something similar. And it's that sort of thing that when you recast historical events, at one point in time, it would have been absolutely categorized as a miracle because nobody could conceive of it happening in real life.
Well, the Arthur C. Clarke quote, right, that any sufficiently advanced technology would appear to be as magic.
Correctamundo.
And to that effect, I have said, and I don't think people really understood me when I tweeted this out, because I think...
If you go looking for understanding on Twitter, it's your fault.
I believe that we are entering a new age of magic.
Yes,
because like, if you go back 100 years, right? I was watching this there's the show, not show. It's a movie. It's based on a Stephen King book. The book is really good. The movie is actually pretty close. I believe it's called 1912, or maybe it's 1920 something. It's with Thomas Jane. It's a Netflix. Netflix did it, but it's set either in late 19-teens or early 1920s, and it's about this farmer.
Okay.
Right, and he's it's kind of a murder story. It's one of those creepy. It's Stephen King doing his best Edgar Allan Poe impression, right? The sort of tragic tale. How he it's his classic style.
Yeah.
Not terribly supernatural. Way more psychological. A little more Dolores Claiborne style.
Okay.
So, you look at something like that and you think about it, and it's like, okay, that's about 100 years ago. The average individual, everything in their world, they pretty much knew how it worked because they had to fix it, they had to mend it. If they owned a car, they could work on it themselves. They could build their own house. They could work on their own plumbing. They could do all these things.
Interesting correlating fact. The last real scientist, quote unquote real scientist, who was said to have understood the entire body of science as it existed
Bertrand
during
Russell.
his time, Voltaire.
Oh, okay. I never really... Was Voltaire a scientist?
Oh,
I
he was
know him
everything.
as a philosopher.
Yeah, Voltaire
Wow.
was a man of many talents, but he understood, right? Like there was nothing you could get past this guy.
Right. He had a grasp of what
Everything.
was. See, and so this is why I say. Now, I'm a tech person. Like I'm a professional software developer, but I'm looking
I
around.
used to be.
I'm looking around. So I'm looking around and I'm like, and not only that, I'm an audio engineer. I've been doing video production for a very, very long time as well. Streaming media, I've been involved with for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm looking around at all the stuff that we've got, and I'm like, and I've built streaming sites. Like I've built the back end, but I will tell you, like I love there's this Joe Rogan joke that he does that he's like, let me drop you off in the middle of nowhere with like nothing but like the clothes that you're wearing now. How long before you can send me a text message?
Oh, I would never send him a text message, but that's okay. I mean, that's just me.
But really, you get the meaning,
absolutely,
right? You get
it all
the
depends
meaning.
on. Okay, so there's two questions there, right? The first question is how long before you can send him a text message, which is, like obviously you got to recreate all of civilization.
Exactly, that's the
send a
joke.
text
Yes,
message. Yeah. But the second part of that question, which I think is equally cool, is bad things happen to people every day. And if you're not sufficiently prepared, like, I don't know what everybody else's EDC is, but mine's pretty dope.
This is, I mean, we're in an age of magic.
We are. Absolutely.
Most people don't realize just how deep, and they're fully in it. I mean, I look at these people who like spend their life on Instagram, and I'm like, you don't understand how any of it. No. Zero. For all you know, it actually is magic. Yeah. Like it may as well be magic to you because you have no technical understanding at even the smallest, like beyond putting a case on your phone. You have zero technical, like this is just a magic box that you press on, and then you take a picture, and then all of a sudden people can see, can see you doing something crazy. Like that's magic. We're entering into a new age of, and it's only going to get worse.
I would recharacterize your new age of magic in two contexts.
Okay, go ahead.
One, I think it's a new age of ignorance. To be perfectly honest.
But what's really the difference?
Well, okay, so the other new age of magic. So there's two, right? So I have two contexts in mind.
Okay.
One is that it's a new age of magic because the vast majority, and I'm not even kidding with this number, the vast majority of people are completely ignorant about how the technology that they use every day works, including their damn car. They have no freaking clue.
Yeah, most people cannot even change their oil.
No clue.
Yeah.
And they don't know how their computers work. They don't know how their electronics work.
Nope.
None of it. They have no idea how the signal gets to their television.
No
clue.
Zero.
So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, even for those of us that are a bit more plugged in to how the world works, we are entering a new age of understanding that we have no understanding of how the world works.
I'm the first to admit that.
Quantum mechanics continues to baffle and amaze. And, next week, I'm going to blow everybody's mind. Okay. I'm going to bring an actual demonstration. We're going to set up a camera. We're going to do the thing. It is going to show... honestly, I'm not going to spoil it. It is going to be mind-blowing. It's going to be really awesome. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Bell's theorem. We are going to talk about, Einstein and Newton. And we're going to talk about, why Einstein may have actually been right, even though a lot of people all along have been saying, oh, Einstein was wrong about this. Maybe not. Maybe he was actually right. And Bell actually came along and kind of reinforced the whole idea. I consider Bell to be probably the most important physicist since Einstein. His contribution to quantum physics is equal to Einstein's contribution to classical physics, which in my mind is equal to Newton's contribution to classical mechanics.
So we've got three for you. We've got Newton, Einstein, Bell. That's how you
those
go.
are my three.
Those are your three.
Those are my
three biggies.
Absolutely. But consider this: Bell's theorem was published in like 1964, I think.
Now Bell.
Holy cow!
Now Bell is the non-locality guy, right? With the
oh my
field,
God, I
the
can't.
Bell
Okay,
field.
first of all, I cannot believe that you were 100% correct in what you just said.
Why? I don't understand.
Most physicists get it wrong.
Okay.
Most physicists actually think that what Bell was talking about was the hidden variables, right? He was disproving hidden variable theories.
Okay.
That is not what he was doing. He was proving non-locality. Oh, brother, high five. Seriously.
Man,
oh my God!
Destination unknown.
Honestly, I've never had this conversation with somebody who actually got it, like before I even started talking about it. Wow!
I think we need more wine.
We
on
do.
that note.
All right, so next week, blowing your minds with some more quantum mechanics. We'll tie it back into simulation theory and all that stuff, because we can't not tie it into simulation theory.
It seems like the simulation theory seems like it's going to be a theme that we're going to be keeping on coming back to.
Well,
but how could we not, really?
So many things fit into it. And that's the thing, is that when you start looking at things from the standpoint of how does this actually represent reality, it doesn't. And physicists will come out and just flat out tell you, this is not reality, this is mathematics, right? We are just calculating probabilities. Our universe is not real. Our universe is not local, meaning that the sphere of influence of any object interacting with another object is limited by the speed of light. What we are actually saying is that our universe is indeterministic, meaning that everything's controlled by probabilities, which to me sounds an awful lot like how you would program a simulation if you didn't need all the detail.
So where do out-of-body experiences, from astral projection, as we've talked about, to lucid dreaming, to, let's go with ayahuasca, okay? So I although not with ayahuasca, but certainly with psychedelics in general, I have been able to have conversations with professional physicists, chemists, for a very long time, and one of the weird things and it's just occurring to me now, who have done psychedelics. We can have psychedelic conversations. We can talk about our experiences. It's weird, and I've never pressed them on it. Seems like don't want to ever get tied into talking about how does this relate to physics. Because clearly, if we're having these, to go back to the idea that we're having these consistent experiences across multiple people, right? You would think that this, and it's known, especially with ayahuasca, like it's known. You would think that if you're a physicist, that you would be particularly intrigued by this, that you would want to go and do ayahuasca, and then upon having this consistent, an experience consistent with what other people were having, which is what's going to happen, that you would then feel the need to figure out how this fits into the world of physics, because the rules are clearly not any of the rules that have been laid out, but yet ignored. And it seems like this should be top of mind. This should be priority A number one.
But it's not, because it happens, in theory, it happens within the brain, and physicists don't give a crap about what happens in your brain.
Unless it's figuring out formulas, because mathematics happens inside the brain.
Sure. It also happens inside computers and,
which are brains, which are simulated brains.
Sure. And they were programmed by brains, by organic brains. At least in this simulation. I don't honestly believe that physicists will ever really look at psychological phenomena and try to apply it to their own work, because their own work makes so little sense as it is.
But psychology is a part of the physical world.
Sure,
these phenomena are happening. They're not separate from the physical. I mean, it's like, unless I'm separate from the physical world, it's not like you could just say, oh, what happens inside the brain? What happens inside the brain is not in the domain of physics. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's not in the domain of physicists.
Oh, physicists.
Who want to study that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It is.
That's a problem for me, because if we're talking about utility, right, we're talking about what is useful. Clearly, for human beings, these experiences are fundamental.
Yeah.
These spiritual experiences, these are the things.
They have been throughout history.
They're what alter individuals, and those individuals are the ones that go on to alter cultures.
Ooh, do you want some examples?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, man. So, just to touch on psychic phenomena that has influenced, history, that has influenced, people beyond the person having the psychic experience. Obviously, we have all the biblical references, right?
Yep.
So tons of biblical references, Abraham, Jacob, Daniel, Joseph, Peter, Paul, and literally the entire book of Revelation.
Oh, yeah, that's like the Revelation of St. John.
The entire book.
It's crazy.
One big vision.
I think mushroom trip. That's what I've always thought.
Could be.
I've always thought it's a mushroom trip.
Extraterrestrials? I don't know.
Could be. Yeah. Abduction. Yeah.
Yeah, any of those things. I mean, and it is a gigantic part of, like, one of the world's leading religions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're we have millions and millions of people who are saying factually, this occurred, it's in the Bible, it's true, it's a vision of the future.
We're talking about Revelation.
Revelations.
Right, okay.
But I'm just saying that you have a tremendous number of people accepting this as fact.
Right.
No question, it is absolute fact.
Now, here's where I'm perhaps willing to go with the whole apocalypsis, right? With the whole book of Revelation, is I'm willing to go with this was a real vision.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I'm willing to go, or maybe a series of visions, right?
Absolutely.
I'm willing to go with this was a real vision, and I think that it's telling that this particular vision by this individual, it goes right back to what we're talking about this consistent experience.
Yeah.
Because if it was just nonsense, why does it resonate with so many people? If it was just, first off, if it was just nonsense, how does it make it into the canon in the first place?
Right. How does it pass the Council of Nicaea?
Because it's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, you read the rest, the
it's
entire
It's
rest
mysticism.
of the Bible. The entire rest of the Bible, there's nothing even approaching the level of pure abstract weirdness.
No, this is Dante.
It's Dante.
Yeah.
Well, Dante was clearly drawing from.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that your point is absolutely correct, that we had a certain range, a spectrum of religious experiences that were approved by the authority.
That's
the
what I'm
religious
saying.
Authorities. And then we have the Book of Revelation
At the end, and it's the last one.
Yeah, it's a freaking acid trip,
It's a straight up psychedelic experience.
It is. And it made it in.
How?
Don't
Why?
know. Yeah.
Why? This is something I don't feel enough people are talking about.
Right. Why did this not end up on the cutting room floor?
And it's also, particularly in the modern age, there really are revelation Christians.
Yeah.
There really are Christians for whom all of their entire religion is this one book. You may as well throw out the rest of the Bible.
Yep.
This one book is their religion, and it makes me think that perhaps this has always been the case. That perhaps this book of Revelations, the reason why it made it in the first place, the reason why it made it past the Council of Nicaea, which was a political thing, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Trying to pull all of the disparate churches. How can we pull all of the disparate churches together? That it makes sense to me in that context that, oh, wait, perhaps there has always been a segment of Christianity that has been Revelations Christianity.
Or every religion. Really? I think...
it is in it that the apocalyptic idea has its expression in every religion.
Absolutely. And I think there's always been that stereotypical guy with the sandwich board, the end is near, in every religion throughout history.
Now, why is the end is near? Why is that always a psychedelic trip? Why is that always where things fall apart? Like, why is the end, the eschaton, right? It's eschatology. That's the study of the end times. Why is that always a fucking acid trip? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Because it can never just be presented as like, well, maybe because if it's not an acid trip, it can't happen, right? Maybe that takes us to another type of out-of-body experience, the near-death experience, which I believe I have had one.
What? When were you near death?
So, I have the scar on my head to prove it. You can't probably see it in that light, but
no,
I'll show you.
Your head's too pretty.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So, you want to hear my near-death story?
Please.
Okay. It's a relatively recent story, actually. So, well, I think as a great many... Well, we were talking on the way over about how celebrity can be a killer.
Sure.
For sure.
Did somebody hit you with a battery?
No.
Oh, okay. That's a thing.
No, I did it to myself, which is what celebrity does. So I think this is probably about 4 seasons into being on Gigolos, right when the money started getting really good all around. And I really just was in like fuck you money stage, right? Like it really was like that.
That is the best stage to be in.
And not only that, but I was living in Vegas and was the star of a now long-running TV show based in Vegas. So not only did I have fuck you money, but I also had fuck you street cred. So I didn't even have to spend the fuck you money.
Right. Okay. So for those of you in the audience who are not aware, let us also expand. You had fuck you money, and also you were on a show about guys with ridiculous sexual talent.
That's right. Yes.
So there again,
yes,
is a third level.
Yes. So, it was a very weird time in my life. I was also dating and cohabitating with. So I was like top male escort in the world. I was dating and cohabitating with the one of the top female escorts in the world, and was operating in that circle of very, very high-end individuals. It's a very sort of closed world, but a crazy one.
Yeah.
And, we would go out in like huge groups of just like, and everybody knew, but it's a cut above, right? Because it's like, there's this certain, what was interesting is like there are many beautiful people in Vegas, and there are many celebrities and people who are running around doing these things, but the people who are in Vegas, the sort of hosts and whatnot, there's also still that Vegas underworld, right? And so of course, you've got the drug dealers and the mobsters and this sort of thing, and like they can only get so far.
None of which would exist if the government would loosen up.
Right,
that's a whole different show.
In the night, but like going out and in the nightlife that was big at that time, going out with the underworld of the very, very high end, well known escorts is kind of the one where it's like. Because there's no violence involved. Right? These are the underworld characters who are the not violent underworld characters.
They value discretion over everything else.
And it's great to have them around. Everybody wants us around.
Sure.
Well, we're paid to be around, right?
But these are not... Okay, so for those of you who have not been to Vegas... literally pick up any magazine or newspaper sold on the street. You're going to see ads for escorts.
Oh, for sure.
Vin is not talking about those people.
Not those. No.
This is an entirely different. Like, if you don't know about these people, you will not know about these people.
That's right. It's a very closed world. It's a world of, it's sort of like when you have a certain level of money.
Yeah,
you're able to play in that world.
There is a certain access granted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was interesting being a straight man in that world, because one of the club hosts and the casino hosts and all of these people, they loved me because they would be like, "Oh, hey, I've got this, this whale flying in from Germany and whatnot, and he's got a table, and he's got like in the villas out there. Who would you recommend? Like, I want some girls who will just like blow his mind." And I'd be like, "Oh, my friend here and my friend here," and I just, you know what I mean? Just So it's a very, very sort of interesting situation. So okay, I've told a sort of broad story. So it's like, had the fuck you money. But also, I didn't have to even spend the money. That was the weirdest part, right? Like, I could just go out and get free bottles and tables and dinner at 5-star restaurants and the whole. It was crazy, and I think something happens where you lose motivation, right?
And maybe some perspective.
I had very few responsibilities. I didn't have to get out of bed if I didn't want to. And like that feels good for a minute.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very empty feeling. And I think that having the background that I have in terms of like trying to develop my spirituality over the years, like trying to understand more about the world, and then being in this situation, it's like the weird part about it was, and we were talking about this on the way over, that it's like even when you're conscious of it, it's hard to pull out of a tailspin. So during this period, I went to go and visit my brother in Chicago. He was living in Chicago.
Does he listen to the show?
I don't know if he's listening to this. He might be listening right now. I have no
brother,
idea.
how
Hey,
you
what's
doing?
going on? So I went to visit him. He's in Chicago. He's actually a professor at University of Chicago. He's about to start at Stanford. Actually,
What subject?
Sociology. Unfortunately, he's a Marxist, so we're just gonna leave that by the wayside.
Oh, all right.
But I love him. I love him. I love him to death. And
So sad when good people go wrong.
Yes, it is. Someday he'll come around, I'm sure. We'll have to get him out. I'm trying to get him out here, but the further they are away, he's going to be in San Francisco now, so it's over. You know,
We'll bring him up here. We'll shoot some guns.
Exactly.
We'll drink some booze.
Oh, he loves to shoot guns. We were raised with guns. That's we're good with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, dude, he's a real Marxist. Real Marxists like guns.
Of course they do.
Right?
Because they enforce their power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I went out to visit him. We went out, we had some dinner, and I was in that phase, you know. I was like, my head was in that space, and went out, ended up hanging out with some of his friends, and he was like, I got to work in the morning. He left. I stuck around with them. This group of girls, drugs just started appearing out of nowhere. I was drinking whiskey, there's coke, there's fucking weed over here, then I get given some pills, and then they're like, let's go to Smart Bar, which is this great house music club in Chicago. And so we go. I don't remember a whole lot, but basically what happened was I was trashed. They put me in a cab. I was good. I was able to tell the cab my brother's address, no problem. He got me there. I got out of the car. This was it had iced for the first time in Chicago for the year. This is like late November, early December.
So this
like
didn't even
December
happen in
1st.
Vegas. This happened in Chicago.
This happened in Chicago.
Wow.
In Vegas, this wouldn't have happened. What's weird in
there's
Vegas?
no ice in Vegas.
Well, what's weird in Vegas was that when I wound up just safe at home so many times without remembering how I got there safe at home, because it was like all eyes were on me, and if I started to go a little weird, it was like I was taken care of.
You had handlers.
I had handlers.
That's awesome.
Which, no, it's not, because because I did not have such handlers in Chicago. So I open up the cab door. I'm at his apartment building. Step out, slip on the ice, go head first into the curb.
Ooh.
Into the curb. Split my whole head open. There's just blood gushing everywhere. I remember a little bit of that, and then I remember the hospital. But what I remember was being in it, not darkness, quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Like a soft white light.
Okay.
Everything feeling no problem. Like, cool. Like, it's all good, man. No problem. And sort of faintly hearing the police, the paramedics talking, you know. In it, I don't remember the exact words, but the gist was kind of like, oh, this guy's gone, man. Like, I don't know. Like, what's going on? Like, he's like toast. Like, get him up in there, whatever. It's like unconscious, but
wow.
but conscious. But that was the weirdest part about it was, one, this light the whole entire time,
mm-hmm.
and two, this absolute level of calmness. And I remember even thinking to myself, like, I'm about to die.
Mm-hmm. But you were logically thinking through it.
But I was like, but you know what? It's cool, because I wasn't even like anxious about it.
Yeah, that is common for near-death experiences. People report that same kind of thing. There's a luminous environment around them, and they can see potentially rescuers. They can see their own body laying on the ground. They feel a sense of calm and peace. Sometimes there are other, entities that might be dead relatives.
I didn't get any of that.
That's not, it doesn't happen every time. Some people experience that.
I think some of the reason why I may not have gotten that was because I was so fucking high and drunk. Like, I probably OD'd.
Potentially. I mean, I have no idea what you took.
I took a lot. I knocked myself out, and I'm pretty sure that I OD'd as well.
Yeah. You lost blood.
I lost a lot of blood. In fact, my brother said that he woke up, he looked at the time, he was like, "Where is this guy? Like, what's the deal?"
He walks out, he sees blood all over his stuff.
You said it. Yep.
It's Chicago. He thinks, "Oh, no big deal." And
oh no, he knew. He said that when he went out, he knew immediately. His particular building had like a security type, not a real security, like somebody who sat down there. And then he said, "What happened?" They're like, "Some guy got out of the cab and he just slipped and he knocked himself out and there was blood everywhere." And he said, "Dude, I knew him immediately that it was you." So at least he was able to get to the hospital. So thank God. It was great when I woke up and he and his girlfriend, who's now his wife, were standing there, and she. It was funny. It was funny because they took me to Cook County, which is the worst. You don't want to go if you're about to die. You don't want to go to Cook County.
You don't want to go there to jail either.
No, absolutely not. So they took me to Cook County Hospital, and it was late, obviously, and they had an intern assigned to stitch me up, and it was funny because they let my brother and his girlfriend, again now his wife, back, and I don't know why they let them back into the emergency room. I guess I think she works for University of Chicago Hospital, so she probably was able to get them
obviously qualified,
right? So they're standing by the bed, and the intern is there. And he's, about to start stitching me up, and she goes, "Are you a plastic surgeon?" And he says, "Oh no, I'm an intern." She goes, oh my god, no, he's on TV. He needs his face. You need to get a plastic surgeon."
Oh, okay, kudos to her. That was excellent.
But
done.
But he clearly did a really good job because you can't even actually.
He actually did it.
Yeah,
they didn't get a plastic surgeon.
His hands were shaking. My brother said. He did it. He really did a great job. And what's crazy about it is that I don't know, maybe a month and a half later, the woman who I was seeing at the time, who obviously knew a thing or two about plastic surgeons, was like, "I'm going to take you to my." Well, she's a very top escort. You know what I mean? She was like, "I'm going to take you to my plastic surgeon in San Diego." So I go to her plastic surgeon in San Diego, who's amazing. And I was like, "Oh, can you do a, scar revision?" And she looked at it and she was like, "Whoever did this did a fantastic job. I can't even, if I did a scar revision on this, if I cut it again, it would mess it up even, just leave it. It's great."
Okay, so truth be told, I can't see it.
See? Most people can't. You'll hold on, I'm going to show you. It's right here.
Nope.
Okay.
No, see, there's nothing there.
All right,
there,
I'll
dude.
take it.
Okay,
I'll take
so whoever the genius intern that stitched you up, great job, buddy, because you can't freaking see a goddamn thing.
Cheers to you, my friend. Cheers to you. But that was weirdly enough, while I would not want to do it again, while it was quite a bit of a wake-up call, I changed a lot of things at that point. There was an imminent breakup. A lot of things changed. They say when you have traumatic brain injury, which I'm sure I had from that situation, I don't think that you can hit your head so hard that it splits open and starts gushing blood. And
you were at least concussed.
Right. Oh, clearly. They say that your personality changes from traumatic brain injury, but. Either way, it was.
So this is the better version?
Yeah, this was yes, it is. I don't know. It was a huge wake up call, and it also was. I'm actually, although I wouldn't do it again. I'm thankful for the experience, just for having been in a situation where I was pretty sure that I was very close to death, but yet felt completely at ease. Like, I definitely know that, like, had I expired in that moment, I would have been totally fine with that. And I'm like, okay, that's very reassuring to me.
Did you have any of the tunnel of light or any of those kind of experiences?
I don't think maybe I wasn't that close to it. You know what I mean? Maybe I wasn't. I think you get the tunnel of light when you actually die.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they have to, like,
ceased to be,
revive you. I have a feeling that what the tunnel actually. See, what's interesting is I was in a complete white environment of soft, very, very comfortable white light, right? Completely white light. Now, mind you, it's dark, it's nighttime in Chicago. So again, as we talked about before, this is the light that's not hitting my optic nerve. This is something internal, right? This is the internal light. I'm having this experience. It's this completely white light. I have this feeling that the tunnel of white light, what it actually is it's your brain or your consciousness shutting down and moving the amount of that light, shutting it down, you know, and of course it would, since it's in this sort of 360, of course it would move in a sort of something approximating like a circle as it closed down, right? And so you get the perspective of a tunnel.
Yep.
But it's not that you're necessarily traveling through the tunnel per se. See, that's what's so weird. Like, it's hard to understand what somebody's expressing there, because if it's shutting down, that would seem like you were backing out of the tunnel from a perspective standpoint. If you're moving through the tunnel, it should seem like it's expanding.
Well, I think what the tunnel represents, and again, we have this archetype of a shared experience that I'm not sure can be explained through normal psychology, right? We have an extremely similar experience being reported by so many people. Is that some indicator of an underlying, thought pattern, something from our ancestors, some kind of programming?
Is it in our biology?
Could it be in our biology? Could it be programmed into our DNA? I don't know.
What purpose does it serve?
But that's the thing. Maybe it is the same tunnel that people experience traveling through the astral planes. When they leave their body and they go to higher planes, the other planes, perhaps it is the same trip that they're taking, but it's a one-way trip, right? And, what if, right, like the simulation that we're living in is more of a training simulation that is replaying the same, segment of history, and we're all, maybe having different courses, living different lives during the same period of history, and that sense of traveling is really just going back to quote unquote real reality before you get sent back into the simulator. I don't know.
You're suggesting that this is purgatory.
No, not at all.
The suggestion that you're making?
Not at all. No, I don't think that there is any religious connotation. I don't think that there is any sort of...
But, I mean, as an analogy. I'm saying as an analogy.
I don't know. I don't know that I would classify it as purgatory. I think that there are people that through history have said that we are actually living in purgatory, and I think Lost actually ended on that premise, which drove me crazy. I hated the end of that show. For 7 years, and that's how they ended it. Oh, so mad. Anyway, so I think for me, like, if we're looking at simulation theory as a valid theory, there is also the theory of this is a training simulation. Yeah. Like, not only could this be a simulation of, okay, the simulation is occurring, we're experiencing it in real time, calculations are happening in real time, this is, the result of those calculations, we're having this experience, blah, blah, blah. What if this is a fixed time period in history? So we have 50 years or so, and we have completely recreated, like, to the nth degree, this particular simulation. And what we're doing is we're actually sending people back to occupy certain lives during this time period so that we can either train them for some purpose or gather some kind of insight or knowledge about what is happening during this time, and everybody else is just an NPC.
So there's two things there, right? There's two things.
There's many things, but yes, go ahead.
So, well, of the two things that you just mentioned, seems to me two possibilities. One, if this is a training simulation, that would seem to validate the claim and idea, or at least the concept, that we would retain our personality, memories, etc. upon death. But
only in our quote-unquote real life, which occurs outside of the simulation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but that we would, like, move through the tunnel of light, we move into the outside, and they're like, hey, you did it! Congratulations! There's a Rick and Morty episode. That, of course, is a Rick and Morty episode of everything.
Yes.
But it's like, you lived the life, and it's like, yeah, you scored 5,000 on the video game. Good for you, man. Like, hey, good. Or, yeah, you're trained up now. You have all the skills to, like, fight the Terminators, whatever the fuck it is. Or, no, we're just running the simulation and we're observing, and it's lights out. It's lights out, man. At the end, it's lights out. But then I wonder. Who stopped the rain? That's the wine. That's the wine. That was the wine.
Oh, come on. Half of this show is the wine. Come on.
No. I can't.
All right. Okay. I'm going to wait for you because after you're done.
Zone it in.
Yeah.
Zone it in.
Do it.
Then I wonder, what's the point of adding in the sense of calm at that point of death?
Because you're retrieving your person, dude. You're pulling your guy back from the abyss. I mean, hey, accidents happen, people die. You don't want your dude to be all stressed out when he comes back home.
See, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because why? Evolution and computer programming are conservative.
Mm-hmm.
You don't rewrite code that works.
No, you leave it the way it is.
I mean,
oh my God, I have such a story to share about this, but go ahead.
Do it. No, go ahead. Please.
Okay.
It sounds like this is, yeah.
I don't know if this is a mystery to people or not, but I work for Microsoft. And at one point in time in my history at Microsoft, I've been there 18 years. So,
wow.
Forever
I didn't know that.
In computer time. So the interesting thing is that during my career, I've done so many different things. I literally cannot stay in one job for too long. But Microsoft has been amazing for me because they allow me to do really pretty much all kinds of different stuff all the time, and it's great. At one point in time, I was actually supporting like Windows Server, and I was debugging the code, and I actually wrote code that is, I believe, still in the debugger package that you can download today.
It's always nice.
It's great to have code that people download and run. It's fun. But the coolest thing for me, and I'm not giving away, I don't think, any big secrets here, but if you read the Windows source code, the most fundamental components of the Windows source code are commented by David Cutler. There are those of you in the audience who may be tingly right now, just like me. And I'm telling you that this was kind of a surreal experience, because when you are surfing the source code of Windows and you're just reading along, and then all of a sudden you get to a comment and it's frickin' signed by David Cutler, you get titty boners. I'm just saying, it happens. It's an amazing transcendental experience as a computer dude. David Cutler, the only living creator of 3 commercially viable operating systems. The dude is a computer god.
Well, what's interesting is, it's funny because I was having this conversation with one of my business partners, is that this exists in every realm, right? So I'm in cryptocurrency, I'm in Bitcoin, so our platform is written in Python. There's so much code that comes from actually the guy who ended up leaving Bitcoin to go and do Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, Russian guy, right? He's worth $500 million now.
Yeah.
Not bad. Super genius, right? Ethereum is the number 2 cryptocurrency in the world.
Genius.
Right. And he's 24 years old. 25 years old, worth $500 million. He's not even in Bitcoin. But if you write anything that's Bitcoin in Python, there's going to be some of Vitalik's code that's in there.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting and weird when we talk about coming into like an age of magic and these magicians, right? The priest class. And going to the idea of like what sticks around, whose work sticks around. Like the revelation of St. John. They don't even know who the hell this St. John was.
No, they don't.
They have no clue who this guy was.
This guy just appeared out of nowhere.
No clue. Now, it's written in Greek. Apocalypsis, right? It's written in Greek. It's a Greek monk, they think, maybe. I've heard like some island near Mykonos or something like that. But
weird
still,
that the Antikythera mechanism came from around there.
Oh, well, there you go.
Kind of weird.
Maybe we're talking about the same civilization.
I don't know.
Perhaps.
It's just a weird thing.
To me, it seems very like. It seems that these are the types of things. Well, these are the types of things we talk about on Destination Unknown, but these are the types of things that get skipped over. It's where you're like, how much of your Christianity, like the person listening, how much of your Christianity is the Book of Revelations?
Yeah. Because
the Book of Revelations has very, very little to do with Jesus.
Right.
Very, very little. I mean, it has as much to do, like, okay, maybe it's somebody who's using the metaphor of Jesus while in an acid trip. It's like somebody saying to me, dude, I ate like 8 ounces of mushrooms and Jesus was there and he talked to me. It's that.
Yeah, it is exactly that.
It's that relationship with Jesus. Nothing to do with the Jesus of the Bible. None of that. And yet it's in the Bible.
Because the authorities felt that
it was
important and valid and true.
Which maybe makes it the most true, important, and valid book in the entire Bible.
Maybe. It is certainly the most colorful.
I think it's the most impactful.
Oh, for sure. Well, between that and Genesis. I think between Genesis and Revelation, the Alpha and Omega, if you will.
Yes, I agree.
You have the 2 best books of the Bible if you're just reading it for entertainment purposes. I mean, those are fantastic.
I did what's weird is when I was in a sort of coming out of that weird place that I'm talking about. I'll send it over to you, and I found it very interesting that so I've been following Jordan Peterson for a long time. I found it very interesting that
my wife just bought his book,
the 12 Rules for Life. I thought I think it's a bit. It feels like purpose-driven life feels like a little bit of like Joel Osteen getting to the religious thing.
Oh, prosperity doctrine. Oh,
but perhaps that's how you have to communicate these ideas. I actually went to Toronto, and weirdly enough, a client flew me to Toronto and was like, I know you love Jordan Peterson, so we're going to go see Jordan Peterson. I went and saw him do one of his biblical lectures. I think he did like 7 or 8. This one was on Abraham. What's interesting was I had already written a whole breakdown. I did a thing. People can go. It's on the same YouTube channel. It's called the what is it? The Ascendant Project. I can't even.
Yeah, the Ascendant Project. Yeah.
Have you checked that out?
I have not watched the videos. I did look.
I think go. I'd love to discuss it with you. It's funny that we haven't even talked about.
Yay!
That.
I have a homework assignment.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
I would love to discuss it with you, because the starting off point for me in that was with the Book of Genesis, and so the statement is, the serpent told the truth.
Okay.
That's the starting off point.
He did.
The serpent told the truth.
Yeah, the problem was God was lying the whole time.
And this is, so basically what I did, and I'm going to send this to you. I've only showed it to one other person.
Ooh.
Is I did basically almost like a line by line, Genesis through to the story of Lot.
Okay.
All the way through, I call it the Book of the Serpent.
Okay.
If the serpent told the truth, what's really going on in the Book of Genesis?
No, the serpent did tell the truth. That was the whole problem, was that God had created this perfect illusion called the Garden of Eden. So
the holographic universe. We're back at the hologram.
We are totally back at the simulation. We had a perfect reality as proclaimed by the architect in the Matrix. It was perfect. The problem was people didn't like perfection. People rebelled against perfection. They couldn't take it. They didn't want it. They wanted pain. And that's what happened. The serpent came along. He told the truth. He was like, hey, you guys, this is kind of fucked up, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, the rest happened from there. But yes, I will watch the things. We will talk about them. It will be amazing. And honest to God, people need to take a more objective view of this entire subject matter, because
there's a lot going on there, bro.
There is.
When you dig in, I love that I think that here's what's interesting. So right now, Jordan Peterson is considered the preeminent intellectual of Western culture in the English language. This is the New York Times has called him that. He's sold 1.5 million books.
I know he's kind of hot right now. I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm not plugged into that.
Here's the thing: go watch the biblical lectures.
Okay.
Now, what's funny about this is, and people could go and pull up the tweet. It's there. I said, you don't understand it. I tweeted this. I tweet these things out so that they will be a part of the historical record, and so that I could just go back and be like, bitch, I told you so. I said, and because when he started doing these biblical lectures, I interviewed him on my show in February 2017.
Okay.
Virtually no one knew who he was. That's why I was able to get him on the show.
Yep.
Right? And he emailed me right before and was like, let's do 90 minutes instead of an hour. And I was like, absolutely, you've got it. And he said a lot of things on that show that was the first time I'd heard him say them in public. And one in particular about the Book of Genesis, about the story of Cain and Abel. He's like, I was just thinking about this morning. He says this on my show. I've not said this to anybody before, and I'm going to say it here. I would argue to people that had he not done the biblical lecture series that he did, he would not be the preeminent intellectual of Western culture. People don't. Nobody in the press is writing about this. Nobody understands this. And when I went to Toronto, there were maybe there were 100 people in that audience. It's not that big.
It's hard to impress Canadians.
It's not that big of a theater. Toronto, God, fucking love Toronto.
I love it. Yeah.
We're so close too. We're so close to Montreal too. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah. I will.
Let's go right now.
I will make you smoke Cuban cigars. And,
yeah, we could do that there.
Totally.
That's right. That's right.
And it'll be fantastic.
So, no, I would argue that it was him doing, so the lectures are called The Psychological Significance of the Biblical Stories, but he only got through Genesis, and he said, I want to get through all the books. Genesis is the only one. And Revelations. You only need those two.
Yeah.
Those are the two psychological books. They bookend each other. The Alpha and because God even says, I am the Alpha and Omega.
Yeah.
He's not the shit in between. No. That's an interesting statement.
Yeah.
I'm the beginning and the end. You fill in the rest.
Right. And the rest is illusion. The rest
and
is...
just like what happens in an ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah.
The beginning and the end
are the
is
bookends.
the ritual.
Yeah.
What's in between, right? So it's like birth and death.
Yeah.
Those are the bookends that everybody's going to experience the same.
Yeah.
What happens in between, that's the shit that's up to you.
Hell yeah.
And we're at 2 hours.
I have so much more to talk about on this. You're killing me. Man.
Well, save it. We've got to figure out it. Everything seems to be coming back around. Let's do again. A toast for Glenn.
Yes, thank you, Glenn. I don't know who you are, but this wine is excellent. Thank you.
You will meet Glenn. You have to. You're gonna have to come to Free Coast Fest because Glenn is coming to Free Coast Fest.
Fabulous.
You'll have to meet him. Wonderful person. Yeah, he was at Pork Fest. You were not at Pork Fest.
No, I can't go to Pork Fest, but I am planning to go next year. So
really?
Yes. Oh yeah. So we have already started making plans. We've got we're gonna rent a trailer.
Yes.
The thing.
Yep. We did that this year. It was fantastic. It worked out very, very well.
Perfect. Yeah. Herschel, our buddy.
Yep.
We're gonna hang out with him. Yep. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
Oh,
it's gonna be a whole thing.
It's whole tribal.
It's gonna be beautiful.
Dude, you and I we should do a podcast from Pork Fest.
Well, I think we have to because I'm sure there will be at least one Friday during that time.
Oh, there is. Of course there is.
So it's kind of required. I mean, we're going to have to be there.
Done deal.
Talking all our stuff.
God, we're already planning for next year. This show will be in the stratosphere by then. I love it.
It's going to be amazing. And there's so many things. Normally I write a couple of pages just of things.
Dude, you've got 3 pages here. What? 2 pages? What do you got? You've got 3 pages?
I've got 4 total. I've got 2 pages left on the table. I got 2 over there.
What do I have?
Save for next time.
What do I have? I have Glenn's note.
You got Glenn's note.
He said, I read it already.
But what I like to do is I like to write down things where I want to either quote somebody or I want to cite a specific book or date or something.
Got it.
So I want to make sure I have that stuff written down. But, so, I mean, there's literally 90% of the stuff that's here we did not get to. There's
got so much
weird shit sitting
so much
right here that we need to talk about.
Dude, well, that is the tagline of the show.
It is. There's too much.
2 skeptics, 2 hours, 2 bottles of wine, too much weird shit to talk about for one conversation.
Oh, my God.
Well, this conversation's done. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. It is a pleasure as always.
It was great. Thank you guys, everybody who tuned in. We are now on iTunes.
Woo!
You're actually technically not a podcast unless you're on iTunes.
We're a podcast.
We're a podcast.
Excellent.
And Stitcher as well.
And, we're formulating some more ideas about things we want to do, maybe do a Patreon at some point in the future,
I like that. Reach out on that. If people want to do Super Chat, we will take your money. We're happy to do that. Patreon, yes.
Yep.
Something else.
Oh, in addition to Patreon,
wine. If you want to be like Glenn,
please join the Fellowship of the Grape. Please.
If you have a wine. We like red wines.
Red wines.
I particularly cabs.
Yep.
Glenn knew this. He knew this. This guy, he knows me. He's been a listener of the Vin Armani show. I love the cabs. Really, because it's like, everybody has their own taste in wine, but you can't go wrong with the Cabernet Sauvignon.
A good cab. A bad cab can be very bad, but I do love good cabs. I also love good Zinfandels.
Really? We could play around with the Zinfandel. I will go with Malbecs, if you want to throw a Malbec.
Malbec's a little light. It's a little light.
But that's fine for a 2-hour show where we're going through 2 bottles. A Tempranillo, if you want to do a little Tempranillo, I'll do that as well.
I love Tempranillo.
We
the
could do
Australian
a Pinot
stuff
Noir.
is phenomenal.
We could do a Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir, yeah,
No?
sure. Yeah, no. Pinot Noir is fine. I usually like Pinot Noir with like food, but whatever. I mean,
Maybe we could start doing that.
We could eat some dinner.
Cheese.
Yeah, a little cheese plate, a little meat,
If you want to send a cheese plate, we'll take a cheese.
Sure, a little basket of like summer sausage and cheese.
All right, so we've gone too far. But yes, if you want, reach out. Show at vinarmani.com. You can reach out. We would love to hype you. If you've got a winery,
oh yeah,
even better. We'd love to do that. Yeah. Anything more from you?
No, I am all good.
Good.
I sincerely appreciate our audience. I appreciate being able to come and hang out and talk to somebody. I also want to call out again how phenomenal it was to have somebody say, without prompting, that Bell's theory was about non-locality. I cannot tell you how excited I am about that.
I can't take all the credit.
Seriously, oh my God, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
I'm going to give the credit to Terrence McKenna on that one. So, Terrence, mwah, I'd pour out some wine if it wasn't so damn good. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.